Hi, everybody, and welcome to another edition of Words, Images, and Worlds. Is it okay if I say comics legend? Can I say that? Legendary visual artist, groundbreaking visual artist.
Oh boy, that's a uh you can say it. I don't know if it's true, but you can say it.
Okay, well, all of the above. Legendary artist Barbara Dell. Barbara, may I call you Barbara? Is that okay?
Sure, sure.
All right. Thank you for jumping on and talking with me for a few minutes today about books and art and creating in the worlds that you've shaped and crafted in.
It's a crazy way that most people get into this world. It's mostly people who are lost and have no other idea of what they should be doing. They fall into it, or a teacher would criticize them for drawing all the time and they just
Mhm.
keep going.
Oh yeah, yeah. I had the best illustration of like Godzilla fighting some monster on the back of my first grade handwriting assignment. And then I had to erase it, which made for both the absence of the drawing and a very messy page. So yeah, I was one of those
I think
kids.
she should be sued. If you can find her, I think there's a lawsuit there for
Probably.
making.
Yeah, yeah. I think that was a valuable. I could have retired on that, I'm sure.
Man, it was your earliest piece. It's the
That's right.
beginning of the retrospective. Damn.
That's right. Yeah, absolutely. We'll have to. I'll look her up and call my lawyer. So
My
so
son's a, yeah, he
oh,
might help.
nice, awesome, awesome. So we've been talking about books. If you'd like to continue that conversation and take that up, and um, we can also jump into the official list of questions, but I'm always open on that too.
Well, speaking of books,
Hmm.
so I always wanted to learn how to make books. You know,
Hmm. Hmm.
I've been an English major undergraduate school, and I've always liked books. And I had an idea for a one of a kind artist book. So I'm sitting on my porch one day, and I've got a friend from high school there. And I said to her, Susan, I've been thinking about, bookbinding, but I don't want to take bookbinding at one of those crafty schools, where it's going to be like leaves and flowers in the book. I want
Hmm.
something serious. And she goes, well, Barbara, do you know that the American Academy of Bookbinding is in Telluride, Colorado, and it's the Harvard of bookbinding?
Huh.
No, I did not know that.
Uh,
And she said, she lived in Telluride, and she said, look, I know which two courses you should take with which teacher, and you can stay at my house. Well, Telluride's really expensive. So that pretty much sealed the deal. And I
hmm.
took a month of bookbinding with a guy named Peter Garrity, who is of Praxis Bindery, and he's just an unbelievable craftsman of books.
Huh.
Um, so he helped me create this book I had in mind, which was it's called The Meal, and
Uh-huh.
it's in a royal blue presidential linen cover. Inset into it is the presidential seal in cartoon. However, instead of the arrows, the eagle is holding one big bag of money and a screaming naked woman.
Uh,
And that's the case. And you open the case, and it's
uh-huh.
all gold inside. And there's the book. It's got a cutout of acetate. I never could have done this. I mean, I needed this guy to do it. And you see through the acetate Trump, and he
Ah,
got his little tiny hands. He has utensils, and
uh-huh.
above him, inset, it says the meal. And inside, in pantomime, Trump eats the United States.
Ah,
Sometimes a couple of states at a time, sometimes like California, catches in his throat.
uh-huh.
And at the very end, you just see very small in the corner a red, white, and blue turd.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
He ate the whole United States.
He's quite the scene chewer. He really
Yeah,
is.
yeah. He is such a gift to cartoonists. He's not a gift to the world, of course, but
Mm-hmm. Hmm.
to cartoonists, One of my friends, Matt Worker, who's the political cartoonist for Politico, said that during the Trump years, it was like picking low-hanging fruit. You
Yeah.
know, he said, I don't know what it's going to be like when I have to go back to work again.
Yeah, yeah. When real life is that close to satire, it's not much of a stretch.
Correct. Totally
Yeah,
correct. I
yeah.
I have to say at this point, since we're talking about political cartoonists,
Hmm.
there has never been, and this is really sad and horrible, the state that we're in right now with editorial cartoonists. We just lost three uh, Pulitzer Prize winners who got fired. Um, and it's just going that way because newspapers are beginning to believe that rather than have political commentary in visual form in the newspapers,
Hmm.
they prefer non-political cartoons because they don't want to get in trouble and they don't want the feedback.
Yeah.
I mean, the political cartoonists are the front line of defending the First Amendment in America, and it's just part of this sad decline that we're having right now.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I mean, that's part of the American voice, the part of what makes America unique, the United States, in terms of having that opportunity to critique, and political cartooning is a really sophisticated way to do that.
Yeah, and honestly, when you look back at older political cartoons, they were much more hard hitting than we're allowed to be now.
Hmm.
So it's just been a really steady decline. Also, part of the problem is that people can get away with more visually than they can as a columnist. I don't know
Hmm.
why, but they usually can. But I don't know. I guess things are changing, starting with cartoonists getting murdered in Paris because somebody didn't like what they said.
Hmm.
It's
Hmm.
becoming a dangerous profession. What a horrible thing.
Yeah,
Anyway, let's
yeah.
move on to happier things.
Yeah, yeah. The bright side of cartooning, which there is that possibility for critical work, critical critique, for sure. But I imagine it's also, you were talking about binding the book. I imagine it's also a very fun, cathartic experience
To make a book,
to make a book, to cartoon, to explore the world visually.
making a book physically is one of the most difficult things I've ever done in my life. Your fingers, with the cutting and the cutting. So
Hmm.
physically, it's difficult. But yes, being able to be a cartoonist or an illustrator or any kind of artist, really, the ability to speak your mind with where you get to kind of be God
Hmm.
because you can invent the characters, invent what's going to happen. It's all your decision. You can exaggerate the truth, which is really fun. Yeah, and then when you're done with it, you look at it and you laugh.
Hmm. Hmm.
It's a wonderful feeling to come out with something that you're happy with. So
Hmm.
many times in so many parts of our life when we're young and frustrated and nothing ever comes out right, you reach a point where your toolbox is full enough and you can kind of enact what you were trying to do. And
Yeah.
that's a wonderful feeling.
Yeah, yeah. I've had a good number of comics people come on the show, and a lot of them talk about, my question is why comics? Why that visual medium? And they talk about the creative freedom of it, and also the fact that you can tell a space epic or a story set in a living room or a blank stage, and the budget is essentially the same. The casting is essentially the same.
I mean, you have to be in the right place.
Mm-hmm.
When Lee Salem was at Universal Press, he was Doonesbury's editor, The Far Side, and I was lucky enough to have him as my editor. And pretty much most of the time, he would defend you,
Mm-hmm.
uh, and in a really much more articulate way than you could defend yourself. He was the greatest gift to the cartooning world that there was. I remember particularly early Doonesbury when that's all everybody read.
Hmm.
He was having to defend him constantly. I mean, every now and then you get in a situation. I remember doing a Sunday comic uh, from the Stanley family, which was a single panel, but on Sundays it was multi-panel.
Hmm.
I guess this was a big multi-panel, the one I'm thinking of. Anyway, the family has gathered in the bathroom and the baby is, on the toilet and everybody's, clapping. And I even forget what the punchline was, but like the Philadelphia Inquirer said, we are not taking America into the bathroom. And, they wanted, and there were a couple others. So every now and then you have to stick something else back in. You never know what's going to bother somebody.
Yeah, yeah, true, true, very true. Good to be true to that authentic self and authentic voice and laugh every now and then, for goodness sake.
Yeah, I remember one I did, which was a greeting card, and I think it was a greeting card. Anyway, it made fun of American cars.
Uh-huh,
Oh
uh-huh.
boy, I stepped over the line on that one and got a lot of response.
Mm,
Yeah,
yeah,
so that's another one I don't think I would have predicted.
yeah.
It's okay to get in trouble every now and then.
That means you're doing something comedically, I think.
Yeah, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, why keep doing safe stuff? What's the purpose?
Hmm. So, as a young person, was it newspaper comics that got you into visuals? I mentioned my Godzilla on the back of my first grade handwriting sheet, but what was it for you that tapped you into the world of
Well,
visual?
as a young child, I was I was born in Louisville, Kentucky.
Hmm.
So, and the first book I ever memorized was Kentucky Derby Winners. So I had all these little plastic horses. So I could draw horses. The way the bottom part of their leg goes like this, and then it has the hoof. It's kind of complicated,
Hmm. Hmm.
especially when you're just a kid. So that I was no, I, we traveled around a lot, we moved a lot. So I became known as the kid who could draw horses. That was my early childhood. But then while I was an English major, before I graduated undergraduate school, I took a ceramics class. And I made this very strange thing. It was round and it had like pock marks and weird hair. And I called it adolescence. Well,
Hmm.
they were having a show, and the teacher calls me up and she says, you have to come to the show, the opening. And I said, okay. She goes, no, I mean, you really have to. Okay. So I show up, and out of all this stuff, Adolescence won Best of Show, had a big ribbon on it. I took it to the Ann Arbor Art Fair and I sold it. God knows who would want to buy that thing. But I did like, oh, I'm kind of good at something. I mean, I didn't know why. So after I got out of undergrad in English, I didn't want to teach. So
Hmm.
basically, I was unemployable, right? So I became a potter and I made ceramic stuff for a couple of years in my basement. Um, and I realized I don't know what art is. Like I go to museums and they have things in there. I have no idea why it's in there, and they don't have other things, and I'm confused. And I happen to live near a very fancy only graduate school art school called Cranbrook Academy of Art. And I thought, well, they know what art is. Maybe I can get in there. Well, in ceramics, they have in the entire department 12 people from the world. So my odds of getting in there were extremely low. I apply, I don't get in. The next year I apply, but I get an interview. And it's only this one guy who runs the whole department. His
Hmm.
name was Richard DeVore. And he was, a master. And so I'm sitting in his studio and I lay my stuff out on the floor and he says, "You don't know what art is." I go, "Right. That's why I'm here. I want to know what art is. And I don't care about the degree. I don't care about anything else. I just want to know what is good and why."
Uh-huh.
And
Uh-huh.
he says, "Well, you can't come here because the other kids who come here, they all have degrees from fancy undergraduate art schools. So I'm sorry, but I can't let you in here." I said, "Well, if you can't let me in here, can you tell me how I can find out what art is without coming here?" And he gives me a bunch of books to read. And he
Uh-huh.
tells me, after you read all these books and other books that suggests, go down into your studio and just play around for a while. Don't touch clay until that's all over. So now I go away and school starts that in September, and I'm reading, and I read like 50 books, and then I go down in the basement and I play around, and literally I discovered this interesting technique. It's
Mm-hmm.
hard to describe. You sort of drag clay along a cloth and you pull it up, and it leaves this really interesting edge. And I was doing this sort of life cycle series. And I call the guy back up and I say, "Hey, listen, 2 weeks into school now,
Mm-hmm.
I I did what you said, and I've got some things I really need to show you. I think I'm onto something." And he says, "You can't possibly, have gotten anything in such a short period of time." I said, "I really think I have. And if you just see me one more time and you say I'm wrong, I'll go away and I'll never bother you again." Well, that's all this guy, knowing him later, that's all he ever wanted to see. He just wanted everybody to go away and not bother him. So he
Mm-hmm.
gave me one more interview. I go back into his thing. I spread out my stuff. I've got clay debris I'm throwing here and there. And then I sit down and he gets up and he walks around and he's thinking. He goes out of the studio. He confers with someone else. He brings them in. They both go around. They leave. And he sits down and he says, "Okay, you said you don't care about the credit." "Right," I say. He goes, "Well, there's a space in the back. It's not a real studio. You would pay full tuition and you get no credit, but you can be there and you can participate and you'll learn what art is." Oh, it was like the happiest day of my life.
Uh-huh.
And
Uh-huh.
so that's how I got in. And later he gave me credit, but you know, that was the start. I talked
Wow.
my way.
Nice. Nice.
Yeah. And I
And you
really,
read your way in.
I read my way in and I couldn't write books again. I couldn't be doing anything that I did in the rest of my life, including cartooning, if I hadn't had some sense of that art is about communicating a point of view and you
Mm-hmm.
use visual stuff in order to do it. And
Mm-hmm.
they tell they help you know what the visual stuff is. It's
Mm-hmm.
a language that nobody is taught. We have the worst case of art education here in America. It's pathetic. It's not that this stuff is difficult, it's that nobody ever says it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Anyway, so I feel very, 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 very lucky. I do. And through my whole career, I've had one foot in the cartooning and illustrating world, but I've always had another foot in the fine art world.
Mm-hmm.
My feeling about this is that painters and sculptors have certain aesthetic problems they have to solve.
Mm-hmm.
Cartoonists and illustrators, architects, jewelry makers, graphic designers, interior designers, we all have those same aesthetic decisions we have to make, but we also have functional ones. So rather than being the underdog in the art world, I believe that commercial artists and functional artists, we should be Thor and Hera. I mean, I feel like we should be at the top.
I love it. Love
We're
that.
doing that thing, everything, the Ginger Rogers thing, backwards and in heels. Like,
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
that's what we do. And I don't get why it isn't appreciated like it should be.
Yeah. Yeah, same. I was talking with an artist the other day, and they were saying that apparently I did not know this, but in the fine art world, apparently, oil I think is the esteemed method, and
Yeah,
watercolor is not quite as
no,
valued.
watercolor is crafty, and
Yeah.
so are acrylics. I mean, there's exceptions, but I mean, stupid stuff. I mean, the
Mhm.
other thing that's wrong about this is that the value of art is culturally determined.
Mhm.
If you were in Asia, a painting is less valuable than a teacup.
Mhm. Mhm.
So that there goes to show you. I
Yeah.
mean, to me, art if the artist has achieved using the visual language to communicate from them to somebody else, no matter what the genre, no matter whether it's kitsch or oil or whatever it is,
Mhm.
whether it's successful or unsuccessful is the question.
Yeah.
After that, everything else is opinion. I like it, I don't like it, I want it in my living room, I don't want it in my living room.
Mhm.
you know
Mhm. And it says something that as a species, some of the things that we value the most, if you think about the things that people pay the most money for, one of those would be stones. We really like rocks. We sort of find rocks and we polish them off and wear them around and enjoy that as a species. So rocks are right up there, you know. And then of course we print this paper, which is not particularly artistically pleasing. Usually has white men's faces on it and pyramids on the back. Nobody knows what it means, but we find it really really valuable. So we're a species that trades in rocks and paper. We just need to throw some scissors in there and have a real go of it, I think.
That's very funny.
Thanks.
You are absolutely right about the rocks. It's funny. I talked to a guy who trades in minerals the other day, and there are rocks that go for like half a million, a million. It's
Yeah,
crazy. Yeah,
yeah.
I guess it's what people agree on.
Hmm.
Uh, I mean, what do you think about the gold thing? I mean, do you think it's going to stick? I mean, is the world going to change? Are we going to revalue other things than gold? Or
You mentioned the cultural part of it, and that could be an interesting question as far as what becomes more available, less available. What do people wear in whatever medium that we value? That seems to be something that happens if some celebrated person wears a particular thing, then all of a sudden it's that thing. Um, it's interesting, isn't it? I mean,
yeah, I mean, I think there's a lot of ways in which human beings are stupid. I
yeah,
so
yeah.
many, like countless. If we were aliens coming here from another planet, they would just leave. They'd go, these people are nuts.
I
The species.
I like to teach the essay Nasarema. If you've read that, it's written from an anthropological view, and it's a description of the Nasarema tribe and how they put up reflecting spaces and use potions in their mouths to get ready for the day and things like that. And it's American spelled backwards is Nasarema. And I love to teach that with students and get to the end and say, now what exactly was that about? And of course, along the way, they're going, this is crazy. This is crazy. Like, this is us.
It's us. I know. It, when you're a child, those first questions they ask, but why? They're the basic questions, and there's no good answers
Yeah.
because we're stupid. That's the only answer. Why are we living on a planet that we're destroying and it's the only place we can be and it's a rock hurling through space? Why would we destroy it? We're stupid.
It seems to be the thing to do. This is why we can't have nice things, apparently. This is it.
Yeah. Uh, well, we only have a limited amount of time on this hurling rock. So we just have to have as much fun as we possibly can. We pack it in you know.
Love it. Yeah, yeah. Do as many fun things with as little harm as possible, and I think it's a nice balance. I think that works
I
well.
agree. I like that. I like that addition on the end with
Yeah,
as least harm as possible. Interesting. I like that.
yeah, yeah. I try. I try. It's very Egyptian. It's very Egyptian. Um,
Speaking of
so
Egypt, I actually have been to Egypt with my cousin, who was the first Egyptologist to go in the tomb of the sons of Ramses II.
oh wow.
She was in Time magazine.
Huh.
Apparently, the head archaeologist was away and Muhammad found a hole and she was the only one smart enough to get through it. And she was a part of history.
How very cool. Very cool. That's worth more than a gemstone right there. That experience, I would say.
Oh my God. Can you imagine? Frankly, I would have been terrified. You know,
Yeah.
what kind of poisons did they put in there to keep people away? I mean, who knows?
Hmm. Hmm.
Egypt blew me away. They were doing brain surgery. So how do we explain that?
Right.
They
Right.
weren't, well,
No,
at least, no.
no, no. So before you were talking about a limited amount of space on the rock hurtling through, or a little limited amount of time on the rock hurtling through space. Before we get to the end of the Zoom call, which of course we can re-up, I did want to mention your website because one of the places in particular that I would encourage people to go is the art philosophy section of your website. There's lots of interesting work there, lots of interesting things to explore, but you have a philosophy of art section on your
I
website.
do. I didn't remember that I did.
Oh yeah, let me fact check myself here just
Okay.
really
I mean,
quickly.
I have comments on art in my retrospective that's going on right now at the Peel Museum in
Hmm.
Baltimore. There are 10 themes, and I've got about, I don't know, maybe 140, 150 pieces in the show. And a couple of them are comments on art.
That is probably what I
I
am.
probably do have a philosophy of art somewhere. Yeah, I probably did.
Yeah.
Yeah, what did it say?
It's you've got some art philosophy. This is what it looks like right here.
Oh, okay. What
Yeah.
did I say in there?
Cartoonists present simplified visions of a complex world using just black liquid and a pointy stick. And each of
Mhm.
these, I'll say, has a lovely illustration that goes with it. And you also have "We draw what we are."
Yeah, okay. Those were in my self-portrait part of my retrospective. Um, they're true, aren't they? I mean,
Hmm.
the idea that you can take a liquid and a stick and basically define the world as you see it is a miracle, isn't it?
It
I
is.
I
It's a
love
gift.
it. It's a power. It's a superpower.
Hmm. Hmm. Agreed.
And of course, the other comment that we draw what we are has to be true. I mean, think about it. There's nobody in the world who has Aretha Franklin's voice, right?
True.
And there's nobody in the world who could have drawn Peanuts like Charles Schulz. When they have people step in after an artist dies, it's different.
Hmm.
Everybody has a unique voice. And it's your responsibility as an artist to figure out what your strengths are and what your weaknesses are so that you can gear what you do to its best advantage.
Hmm. Hmm. And a gift and a superpower to explore yourself and your ideas that way. I feel like we could do a lifetime of work just getting to know ourselves. And then everybody else is sort of our vision of them, our lens, and the way we see them in a way. I feel like getting to know yourself and getting to appreciate yourself is maybe just part of the project all on its own.
I love that. That is really true. I couldn't agree more. Also, I find at the age of 72 years old, putting together this retrospective, I had to think about who am I? What have I
Hmm.
done? All of that self-examination. And it was helpful I came up with 10 themes that I keep going back to over and over and over again in my life in different ways. Some of them are both themes, 2 or 3 themes at the same time. And that's my voice, that's the stuff that came into my life. But we all have a unique story.
Mhm.
And there was a woman, oh gosh, I have a section in my retrospective that's politics, charity, and social justice. And in it, there was a project I did for a battered women's shelter called the House of Ruth. And I was giving somebody a tour through the exhibit, and some strangers were in there and asked if they could join the tour. I said sure. So we get to the last room where it's going to get to me, where this project is that I did for the battered women's shelter. And as I say the name, the woman standing next to me said, I'm in the house of I'm in the House of Ruth right now.
Mm.
And she was there when I did the project the first time. She had a lifetime in between, and then he died, and she went back to the abuser. And she cried, I cried, we hugged. I went back through another piece that was kind of a metaphor for abuse, and we went through it. And she got a phone 2 days later. They helped her get a phone, and she got in touch, and she started writing. She
Mm.
sent
Mm.
me pieces of her writing, and she's starting to tell her story. And she said, it's really hard. Talk
Yeah.
about, and it's a heck of a story. If she had the toolbox of cartooning skills, she could knock it out of the park. I mean,
Mhm.
anyway, I don't know why I brought that up. You can cut it out if you want, but it
No,
was really
no, I think it's
emotional.
great.
It was very emotional to actually have art connect with someone and then help them begin to tell their own story.
That's what it's all about. That's what it's all about. Absolutely. That's part of why I appreciate you and appreciate the work that you've done.
Man, thank you. That means a lot to me. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Do you want to jump in and have a little more comfortable time to close, or should we close right here? Completely up to you in terms of your day.
I think we're good. I mean, if there's something that you wanted to ask and didn't get to ask, I'm happy to stay, but we covered some pretty profound topics.
I think so. I think we solved life today.
Yeah,
I
the
think
world
that's it.
problems are
That's right.
gone.
That's right. That's right. Well, it's been a great talk and glad to have you back on anytime. And I'll be sure and link your website as well. Yeah,
That's so nice. Thank you so much.
absolutely. Great to meet you, and I'll share this back with you.
Thanks so much.
Thank
Have a
you.
great day.
You
Bye.
too. Bye.